Hello, Choose Love audiences. I want to introduce you to Eva LaRue. I don't need to introduce you to Eva LaRue, the Emmy award-winning actress who is known for many acting roles over many years, especially 18 years as Dr. Santos on All My Children and also on CSI Miami and so many others. Eva, welcome to the Choose Love Movement podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Oh, I am so excited for you to be here. And I was introduced to you through Elizabeth Rom, who is hopefully will play me in an upcoming movie on nurturing, healing love, which would be just another way to get Jesse's message out there. And it's very exciting. But I'm so thrilled that you would come on and speak to our audience. You know, I think that everyone knows you as a movie star, and you've had so many accomplishments in your professional career, and people identify you with your roles. Everybody knows who you are, but I think sometimes we forget that behind this, you know, the beauty and all of your accomplishments, that you're a real person with real life struggles.
Yeah, I mean, we all are, and I think the interesting takeaway from the last 2 years of COVID, and especially in that first year, was that there wasn't a single person on the planet exempt from major hardship and mental health, you know, cognizance. Like we all became, our mental health all became forefront for everybody, because we were all locked down. We were prisoners in our own home and in our cities. And I guess I secretly hoped at the end of all that, because it was, you know, without race, it was without political, you know, affiliation, it was without boundary or border. And I had kind of secretly hoped that at the end of that, even though we're still sort of in the middle of it, that there would be a real unity. And unfortunately, we're looking like at a world war. I don't know how that happened, out of all of us being exactly the same. And, you know, for once on the planet, I almost felt like there was this gorgeous spiritual message, which always comes wrapped in hardship, right? You know, your biggest learnings and your biggest lessons always come wrapped in your most hard to swallow, you know, glass bites. But I really thought that there might be some world unity out of this, and look at where we're at right now.
I know. I remember thinking that at the very beginning. This is kind of like the all leveler type tragedy that is befalling all of us. I mean, it's taking all of us out of our comfort zone for the first time in my lifetime. Simultaneously, we're all in this together, and usually that brings people together.
And it did in pockets all over the world. It did. And there was this, you know, and it was the clapping and the cheering for the frontline workers and the nurses and the doctors. And then all of a sudden it turned around and it became pile on the doctors. And it was just a really crazy, you know, it's been such a roller coaster ride. But again, no one was immune to that. I don't care, you know, I don't care if you were an oligarch or a billionaire or a movie star or whatever. Everybody was in, you know, or you know, living in the slums of India. Everybody was, it was the great equalizer.
It was the great equalizer. And unfortunately, so is illnesses, but so is death and loss. And unfortunately, during COVID, you suffered quite a bit of that. You suffered the loss of, is it the love of your life? I would say your ex-husband, John Callahan, who you starred with on All My Children. I say that because I know that you all were divorced, but you were best friends, and you share a child, and that's always a deep bond. And he died very shortly after we started the quarantine. That's the
Yeah.
father of your daughter, Kaya.
It was interesting. COVID and the quarantine ended up being kind of a backdrop for what was happening to us in the foreground, because my dad had passed away 6 months prior, and then 2 weeks into the shutdown, John Callahan, my daughter's dad, like you said, died, and he was, even though we'd been divorced for 16 years, he was still one of my best friends, and we were really close and got along great. And then 4 months after that, my mother-in-law, who I really loved, she passed away unexpectedly, not of COVID. And then right after that, one of my beloved aunts died like 3 months after that. It was just like we just kept getting kicked in the teeth. And I think that one of the things to add, mayhem to injury was that John's identity got stolen 2 days after he died. They think that it actually might be an inside job with the hospital that he was in, because they were having a rash of home burglaries the second an older person died, because he lived out in Palm Desert, and there's a large elderly community that comes down there during the winter because it's nice and warm and toasty. And so when somebody who lived alone died in the hospital, immediately their house got broken into. So, and all their stuff was, so they stole his laptop, his checkbooks. Before we could get our hands on all those things, somebody broke in and stole his identity. And because COVID was happening, we were unable to get his death certificate for almost 2 months because all the government agencies were shut down. So we couldn't even prove that he was dead. So we couldn't stop the banks from giving loans to some. I mean, I really feel like there's a special little corner in a very uncomfortable place for these people. You know what I mean? Like
I do.
Oh my God.
I do. So you're grieving, and then you can't even grieve because you have all of this other stuff happening, the identity theft.
Yeah.
And I know
it
that's
was so
hard.
overwhelming.
That's hard when you're not in COVID. I can't even imagine what it's like unraveling that in COVID when
my God,
nobody was working and
no one was working. You couldn't get a hold of anybody. Bank of America is probably the most unhelpful bank I've ever. To this day, it's 2 years, almost 2 years later this month, and we have had to subpoena them several times because they wouldn't give us any of the information about how they just like willy-nilly were giving out loans to some dude. And one lady even said to me on the phone, I did think it was kind of weird that he didn't look like his ID, but we gave him the loan. I can't go into a bank and get a $250,000 loan right now. Forget if I didn't look like my ID. But these people are like, oh, that's weird, head scratch. Well, give him the money anyway. I'm sure he needs it. He'll be fine. And they just kept giving it. And of course, they want no part of taking any responsibility for it, or, so it's literally, we even had to have our lawyer go down and for 4 hours talk to a supervisor who was wholly unhelpful. And this has been in it literally is going on for 2 years. So if anybody is trying to choose a bank right now, Bank of America shouldn't be your first choice. I'm just saying, they're not going to back you up. They're not going to help you out. They're not going to, they're literally the worst. They've held her accounts. They won't let her, oh my God. I can't even tell you how many ways they've made it a nightmare. So if you have anybody that that's elderly that has all their accounts in Bank of America, they're going to be frozen up. You're not going to get your hands. You're not going to be able to liquidate anything. Like, you're just toast.
that and it would be so helpful. They
make you jump through so many
ability.
hoops. It's ridiculous. Yeah, they have the ability to make it easier, especially when there's an 18-year-old child that's the only next of kin. Right. And they literally have made an 18-year-old's life a living hell. And they know that they're talking to her on the phone, because they won't even talk to me on the phone because I wasn't the next of kin. She was, and she was 18. So they're making this little girl jump through hoops that don't need to be jumped through. They know her father is dead. They've been given they know all these things. And now, because they, they're liable for all the money that they, Kaya's not liable for any of those loans, but they're holding his accounts so that she can't pay off any of his other things. It's just it's like a nightmare. Yeah,
did they catch the person? Because I mean, obviously the money went to someone. Were they able to
yeah, but it's almost impossible for them to. I think I don't even know if they prosecute these things. I think they're such big banks. They're like, oh, we kind of found the culprit, but they don't. The bank doesn't go through with charging anybody. It has to be the detective involved, and the detective involved doesn't really care. So 2 years later, they're acting like they're trying to find some one person, but even though they have identified the accounts that it's gone into, they just shut the accounts down. The banks aren't in the business of prosecuting people. Right. So they just take the loss and they don't care.
Right. So how do you think that all of that has impacted your grief? Because grief is a process. It's, you mourn, and then you kind of, you're moving through it, and you weren't really able to do that. Then you had this coming down on top of that. And especially, I mean, for you, but also for Kaya, I mean, she lost her father, and you lost
her
your
senior
father.
year of high school, and was shut down in the house because of COVID. It was literally, I honestly, there were a few times in that year that I thought I might lose my kid. There were a few times that I thought, she started talking about, I just don't want to wake up anymore, Mom. I don't want to get up again tomorrow or the next day. And I thought, oh my God, my kid is going to commit suicide or something, and thankfully she kept saying, Mom, I'm not going to commit suicide, but at the same time, I don't want to wake up anymore. I don't want tomorrow to be the same as today, because, grief is just like that. It's that 18th century girdle, that is just like you can't get out of, and you can't breathe, and you can't move, and you can't, and it's with you all day. And then on top of that, all that excess stress. But what it did was elongate, I felt like, the time that we were grieving, because we were so stressed out that first year that we didn't even get to be sad. Does that make sense?
It does.
We were grieving.
You were mad. You were mad.
Yeah, we were mad.
Right.
We were mad. We were shocked. We were trapped in the house.
You were victimized.
Yeah. We were stressed beyond. Every day was like 1,000 little needles of shock, like some new loan that they gave out that they wouldn't stop. The bank wouldn't stop giving out loans, even though we kept saying he's dead. And they were like, well, we don't have a, death certificate. And we're like, yeah, but the mortuary called the bank to say, we're waiting for the government to send to, they just wouldn't stop. And so I felt like it was a full year later, until we were able to quiet ourselves into a place that there was like a secondary rocket of sadness. Then it was just heavy sadness. So I felt like we got robbed of being able to grieve right away. And then the whole second year has just been, like a kind of a quiet, heavy sadness. And I mean, there's so many stages to it, and there's no linear way to grieve, and nobody, and I always find it interesting when audiences are watching a parent or family members grieve on television, and they say, oh, look, they were laughing over there. They clearly did it. No, because you laugh and you cry, and you laugh and you cry, and you remember something amazing that they did that, put everybody in hysterics, and thank God you have that little break where you can laugh and you can all laugh together. But that doesn't mean that you're callous and you are not grieving. It just means that you're riding an insane roller coaster of emotions. That other people are judging. I don't know.
Right. It's so true. Energy in motion, and you move through it, and you have micro moments of joy. I mean, we laughed and cried days after Jesse's murder. And I think that's how you survive. And you're right, though. Gosh, that brings back, I remember thinking that people were judging me if I smiled or if I laughed, because, that's not what you do when you
Right.
have lost someone. And probably
and yet it is exactly what you do when you lose someone. That's why people sit Shiva. That's why people have wakes, so that everybody can come and they can tell all the funniest stories and they can have a break in that pain.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the point.
So how do you think, I know that you and your daughter went through a tough time in your relationship because you've talked about it with other people, but so that was kind of during this time that it was hard for both of you to kind of.
Yeah, because she was taking that rage out on the only other person she's stuck in the house with.
Right. Yeah.
That rage that her dad died at all, and the overwhelming stress of what was happening with the banks and the credit card companies and all of the, the myriad organizations that were such a nightmare to deal with. And she just took all that out on me, and I was ill-equipped to, deal with her. And had we not had a really great therapist, I don't think we'd be where we are today, which is 1,000 times closer and 1,000 times better. But it took a lot of work. I mean, I think we were just both at our breaking point, and we didn't have anybody else.
Yeah, I think, I have a similar situation because I have one son now, and it's just he and I living in the house. So, that other person's there when you go through frustration and anger. And I think that probably a lot of parents that are listening have gone through that with their kids, because we're all now we've been trapped together through good and bad times in our houses. And you can tend to take out your emotions on another person if you don't have the ability to manage them yourself. How do you think, if you wouldn't mind sharing, because I know that this happens a lot with parents and kids, and how did you guys get through that? What do you think? You said that you had a great therapist and she helped you, but what did she say to do, and what do you guys practice to be able to move through really hitting rock bottom with all of your losses, and then being victimized, and then, only having each other? How did you move through that?
We actually found it was more helpful to work separately with a therapist.
Okay.
I think, family counseling or marriage counseling or those things are great, and they're useful tools. But I personally, it's just my opinion. I'm sure it's not everybody's opinion, but it's my opinion that family counseling or couples counseling does not work unless you're both separately going to counseling to work on yourself, because otherwise it's so easy to spend an hour or an hour and a half blaming the person sitting next to you, because now you've got another ear. And now what you're really looking for is a corroborator of your story. You're looking for the mediator or your therapist or whatever to go, yep, he really is an asshole. Or yep, she really is such a jerk. Like, totally it's her fault, right? Yep, see, told you.
See, I was right.
See, knew it.
That's funny.
It's all on you. Then that person shuts down. Then no one's getting any help. Then no one's getting anywhere. So I personally don't think it works, just from my own experience, and watching a bunch of my girlfriends go through it too. But I think it's imperative to be in therapy on your own, so that somebody can help you identify your resentments and towards whoever you're whoever you're dealing with. Identify those resentments. Really identify the obstacles to healing those resentments, and finding and they are our own obstacles. They really are our own obstacles. And then coming together to find a way to say, you know what, I'm having a hard time forgiving you for this, for saying this, for doing this, for taking this side, for it feeling traitorous. because our kids, unfortunately, are just being stupid kids, and they do things though that feel traitorous to us as adults, like downright traitorous. Feels like you took a side, or you did, after all I've done, we all get, as a parent, after everything I've done for you. But, they're also their own little whirling hormonal growing individuals trying to figure out how to be independent and not knowing how to do that without really harming us, like really hurting our feelings. So then it comes down to, okay, I got to be the grown up, and like, I have to see it. These are my hurdles. These are my obstacles. This is my perspective. And what can I now do to set that aside, and really see her perspective? And that's the only way to really heal something. Is you don't have to forgive the perspective. Like, it doesn't mean it didn't hurt. It doesn't mean that it wasn't horrible, or that the arguments aren't horrible, or the things that were said aren't horrible. It just means that there is pain beyond that needs to be understood on both sides. And I think once you start to understand your own pain and disseminate that, and they start to do it on their side and disseminate that, and then you come together, then you're able. We were able to fix it. We were able to say, okay, I see. Okay, I understand. Not just, yeah, but then you burr. It was okay. No, I see, and no, I understand, but that was hurtful. And now we're going to have to learn a new language around that, because and how do we start there? So then the therapist would help us with communication around those spots. But you can't even get to that part if you're just resentful and pointing fingers about how bad the other one was.
Yeah, you have to be able to take a step back, take responsibility for your part,
right,
to be able to connect. And you mentioned the word forgiveness, and you see we have this formula for choosing love. It's above my head here. It's courage, gratitude, forgiveness, which you just meant. And
I can't see the other one. Is that the conversation? Compassion.
Yeah, compassion. So this is our formula that literally is a derivation of Jesse's chalkboard message of nurturing, healing love that he left shortly before his murder, that, I'm spending the rest of my life spreading in schools, homes, and communities around the world. This formula came from that. And you had mentioned forgiveness. And I feel like forgiveness is such an important part of relationships. I know that it is, when you look at the science behind forgiveness, healthy relationships are one of the number one benefits of practicing it. And so how do you think that forgiveness weighed in on your relationship with Kaya and coming back together?
Forgiveness was everything. It was, and the thing is, it was, I think it's easy to throw around the word forgiveness as a cop out of, just say, well, of course I forgive them, and I forgive this, and I forgive that. And oh yeah, I forgive it, because it's an easy word to say, but it can be very hollow unless you've done the work behind it. And I think the work behind forgiveness is the forgiving yourself of all the feelings that you feel, because we can't really forgive another while we are still angry at ourselves for being angry at them. And we can't really honestly forgive another if you are still frustrated with yourself for feeling whatever you're feeling, jealousy, anger, resentment, all the things. And we're secretly mad at ourselves for still feeling that. And we're like, no, I forgive them. I totally forgive them. No, you don't, because you're not even forgiving of yourself that you feel those things. So I think once we're able to really take a hard look at, no, I'm still mad. No, I'm still hurt. No, I'm still, and that's okay. That's okay. And I think once you're able to really release the shame and the guilt and the, I guess it's mostly the shame around still having a feeling about it. And say, it's okay for me to still have these feelings, and for me to maybe not be all the way through them, and forgive myself for still maybe not liking you or not enjoying your personality, or not, I don't have to like enjoy being around the person to be able to say, you know what, I forgive myself for really allowing this relationship to take a complete tumble, and my part in it, all my parts in it that I'm ashamed of, that I let get beyond what they should have. And you know what, I forgive myself for that. And so I can forgive them for letting it take a tumble from their side too. Because I understand how I allowed it to get this bad. And so from their perspective, they may never see how they allowed it to get this bad, but that's okay. I see it. And I forgive myself for it getting crappy. And so if I can forgive myself for that, then I can have like real forgiveness for somebody else. But otherwise, it's just a hollow word, I think.
I love that. So starting off, it's a different perspective. Starting off when you're dealing with your kids with forgiveness of yourself, I think that strengthens you to be able to model for your child what that looks like. And you're already taking a step towards them when you do that. You're softening.
Right.
You can add compassion into that, feeling compassion for where they're coming from. And there was so many ways to feel compassion for Kaya because she'd had so much loss, but then so had you, and you were really both going through it together.
And I couldn't, and I felt like I could not grieve because I needed to be strong for her. So I put my grief on hold. I mean, of course I was grieving. You can't get out of the grip of it, but I felt like I had to grieve in my bedroom. Like I didn't want to break down crying in front of her because she would actually get mad at me. She felt like she was the only one at that point who was entitled to her grief. It was very weird. It was such a roller coaster. And then finally a year later, I was allowed to, once we had gone through therapy and we'd really like worked on helping each other, she was like, okay, this grief doesn't just belong to me, but it felt like it just belongs to me and nobody else should have it. And so there's just all these weird things that grief, all these weird little gifts that grief brings, that you can't possibly anticipate, and they sound weird but they're not weird. They just are what they are. And when you're a little girl and you're grieving your dad, it feels like you're the only one grieving your dad,
Absolutely. So complicated, especially when you're divorced. I can see how a child would think, that the grief is mine. He's my father.
Yeah.
He divorced him.
And she doesn't have siblings. And so she felt alone in that. And then she was mad about being alone in that. She was mad and that she was having to deal with all of this, on top of it. It was really horrible, but forgiveness was huge. It was really key. And it was really key for us to dig deep in our own forgiveness. We talked a lot to each other about how much shame we had around. There's so much shame around death, so much self-shaming because I didn't spend enough time. I didn't say the right thing before he died. I didn't say all the things I wanted to say. I should have spent more. I should have done this. I should have done that. I should have. But there was all these things that we were going to do that we didn't do. And all these things that he's not going to be there for now that we'll never see. There's like this insane shame cyclone that goes on. And so self-forgiveness is probably the most important thing. You can't even begin to forgive anybody else until you forgive yourself. And it's such a process. You can't just be like, okay, I forgive me, I'm good. No, you got to and I think one of the trip ups for us too was she was in such a shame spiral that she was super, super, super defensive. And then that put me on the super defensive. So what we really had to work on was, it's okay to be wrong. No one's going to die. Well, they could, who knows, but they kept dying. So that was a stupid thing to say because every time we turned around, somebody else was dying. But I said, you're not going to die in this moment if you just say, you know what, I could be wrong. I am open to, in this moment, that I just don't freaking have it right. And, or you know what, you're right, I'm sorry. Lightning is not gonna strike you, and it's kind of freeing, because then there's nothing more to argue about. The argument kind of stops right there if you're not defending a shame trigger, because you're going to defend your shame till the end of time. Because you're embarrassed, because it's shameful, whatever it is. And but when you finally just lay down your weapons and say, you know what, you might be right. I'm willing to entertain that I'm wrong. And that I have an obstacle here. I have a personal obstacle in the fight here, and I'll get back to you on that later.
Yeah, and while you're talking, I'm thinking about the fact that you were dealing with a child, a teenager, and this is so hard for adults to navigate as well. And it's things that we learn, these essential life skills that we learn, that this is what's in our solutions that we offer to schools for free, is teaching how to face difficulty and how to learn from it, grow through it, be strengthened by it, and then even take that wisdom through that learned experience and then use it to help others. As much as we don't want our kids to feel pain, we want to bubble wrap them and keep them safe. They're going to feel pain, and they have to have these skills and tools. We do too, to move through difficulty. And I didn't realize how many could be taught. But it's also, you learn through experience, which is what I did too when Jesse was murdered. I mean, I learned so much of this just trying to figure out a solution that would have kept him alive. And even his shooter alive. Like, how can we prevent this in the future? And it was going to the root cause of a lot of the suffering that created that. And so if you can see difficulty like what you and Kaya faced as, I mean, it's so painful and it's the worst of the worst, but it's at the same time, there's a silver lining to everything. At the same time, it's kind of an opportunity to grow. I mean, it was going to happen. I always say I would have given all my growth back for 2 more seconds with Jesse, but I couldn't have that. So it was a tremendous opportunity for growth. And I think when you can come out the other side and realize that, that's when you're going to be okay. And that it's not just going to completely destroy you and take you down, but it does feel like it might for a while.
Yeah. And I think that's so beautiful that you're teaching all of that in schools to young kids, because I've always felt like the one thing that our kids are not learning in school, and that is of the utmost importance, and so they're learning to read and to write and to do math. That's all fine and good, but you've pretty much learned how to do all the basics in that by like the 3rd grade, right?
Anything you're going to remember.
Yeah, you are you smarter than a 5th grader? I'm not. So by the 5th grade, you've pretty much learned all that you're gonna need, unless you need to do advanced math, which I didn't. So I became an actress. But I don't really remember anything from junior high and high school. But the one thing that is missing is personal development and communication. The one thing that we do all day, every day, all of our entire life, is try to communicate with other human beings in a respectful and compassionate manner. And we don't learn any of that in school. As a matter of fact, we learn to bully in school. We learn jealousy. We learn, competition. We learn all the opposites of how to communicate in a holistic way. When what there should be is a class on, what are you feeling? Here are 100 words for vocabulary words on feelings, so that you don't just say, I feel bad, or I feel good, or I feel happy, or I feel sad. But there are 100 vocabulary words that so you they don't come out in your
behavior. So because if you can't say it, you don't misbehave or have it come
out.
Learn
to identify it in kindergarten. Learn how to identify all those words in the 1st grade. So that if somebody says, well, wait, what's happening here? I'm feeling frustrated. I'm feeling hurt. I'm feeling sad. I'm feeling despondent. I'm feeling whatever, I'm feeling a little jealous right now. I'm feeling a little trampled right now emotionally. I'm feeling put down. I'm feeling, disregarded. I'm feeling unworthy. I'm feeling, like, why are we not giving vocabulary words to young children so that in their academic career, they also know how to emotionally communicate to possibly alleviate a whole lot of fights, communication breakdowns, all the things. Maybe, I don't know, maybe make for happier marriages. Maybe people actually, learn this in school and move on into their adulthood, and which of course they would know how to communicate better, but it's not in school and I don't get it.
Actually, there's research that shows that it does reduce divorce rates, by the way, when you teach that in schools. And the thing is, you cannot manage an emotion that you can't identify. You don't even know what it is. So how can you manage it?
You're just mad.
You're just mad.
Because the go-to feeling is mad. When you're frustrated and you can't identify and you're flooded emotionally, you're just mad.
Right. So you're angry. You don't know why. Anger never happens in a vacuum. There's always a reason, but you can't identify it. So your anger just grows. And I always like to say, so that's an explanation of why we're in the place that we're in now in our country,
totally.
In the world, right? Because there's so much anger. There's a reason for that anger, but we're not really thinking about that. And therefore we're not able to manage it. All this can be taught.
Yeah. And it's an easy solution. Like, I mean, if it's being taught in the lower grades, by the time they're seniors in high school, they're going to be so adept at it, because the go-to emotion is if the go-to emotion is anger, and usually the one right behind that is fear. And it's because you're feeling fear of not feeling heard. And yet you're not heard because you don't even know what it is you're feeling.
Right.
And you don't know how to communicate it or identify it.
And communication is so key because it's the key to relationships. Relationships are the key to happiness and flourishing in our lives. We need each other. We're social creatures. And of course, that always brings me back to social distancing. And that was tough for everyone because we are social creatures. We need each other. We need each other to survive and thrive. And so we've just come out of this couple of years of being told to distance socially. And the messaging in hindsight could have been physically distanced, but socially connected, because we need each other. And we're going to be feeling the pain of that, I think, for quite a while. And it's still unfolding, the damage that's caused. There is a way out, though. It's addressing the root cause of a lot of the suffering that we have, including a lot of the mental illness. Dr. Bruce Lipton is somebody who founded the field of epigenetics, and that's about our genes. And, a lot of times we say, it's hereditary what I have. And it's just the way that I am. My parents had it, I'm going to have it. But it's so interesting that less than 1% of our dis-ease comes from our genes. The majority of it comes. Yeah, it's so interesting. The majority of it comes from trauma and how we move through that. If we either grow through it or we're taken down by it, it comes from toxins. So, what we put into our body, how we take care of our machinery here, our body. And a big one is our thoughts. Our thoughts, every thought we have impacts us on a cellular level. So it's either leading us towards languishing or flourishing. And so, at Jesse's funeral, I said, this whole tragedy started with a thought, an angry thought in the shooter's head. And the amazing thing is that a thought can be changed. So everybody, think about what you're thinking about. Choose a loving thought over an angry thought, and you'll make yourself feel better. That'll be reflected in how we treat one another and how you act, your behavior. And a week later, that kind of went viral, and everybody was writing me and saying, wow, that that one simple little thing changed my life. And so that was the foundation of the Choose Love movement. But a lot of it comes back to what we can control in our lives. And there's a lot that we can't, especially in today's world. You look out there, and of course, there's a lot to feel anxious about and to fear.
But you can only control you. So if
Right.
you try to at least control you,
Right.
And I love that. I've all just that your thoughts control your emotions, not the other way around.
Yeah, absolutely.
Your emotions don't control your thoughts. People think, oh, I'm feeling emotional. No, you're having a thought that's creating an emotion. Emotions don't create the thoughts. It's not the other way around.
Interesting, right? So I'm curious, as an actress, how do you think your acting ability has helped your communication, or do you think that it has?
No, but my personal, you know what, I don't think so, but I know my personal growth work, my own personal therapy work, and really identifying my feelings, my obstacles to those feelings, and my inability to for decades being able to identify those feelings and then accurately communicate them calmly and succinctly. My growth work in that process has made me a better actress.
Okay.
I feel like I just have more access to me. I have less obstacles to all the feelings, and I have less issue with worthiness and being heard. I mean, I think it's probably safe to say a lot of us, maybe not the majority, but a lot of us didn't feel heard growing up. We grew up in a different time. Like they just, that generation, suck it up. It was the suck it up parents. It was you didn't have a cell phone to call your mommy every time you got a boo-boo. If you fell off your bike a mile away from your house, you had to figure out how to get your sorry bloody self home.
Yeah.
At 8 years old or 6 years old or whatever we were. And that's the thing too. I would never let my kid be out on the street on a bike at 6 years old. But my mom was like, hey, bye. And I was like, bye.
Me too, all day.
Whatever.
Gone.
Suck it up. If you're hurting or you're sad, shut it up and suck it up. And that was that. So we didn't really, there was nobody, that generation wasn't really coddling our little emotions, you know what I mean? Or, so, and that was kind of great because we're tough, we're tough, our generation, but it also made for a lot of not listening to ourselves and bypassing our own feelings, and until we got so frustrated that we just have something to rage about. And I think, and then now this new generation of kids, they're so coddled, they're so, I wonder how the president from this generation is even going to lead the free world, because they're going to be on the phone with their mom being like, Mom, guess what Russia did today? What do you think I should do? Because it's like the generation of helicopter parents and kids that are like, oh my God, my feelings are, they're like such snowflakes right now.
That's so funny. Needing validation from everywhere, right? All day long.
Everywhere. Yeah, they need 1,000 likes or they're not lovable. Right. I don't know. They need, to show up. Everybody needs to applaud everything they do.
Yeah.
There was this study done that said that for our generation, we took photos in cameras of things we saw. This generation takes photos of themselves. They're not taking pictures of things like as much of things that they see. They're taking pictures of themselves with the thing in the background.
So interesting. You're right.
Yeah. But we took pictures of everything we saw. And then somebody took a family picture, but it was never about a selfie.
So what is that creating? Some sort of low level narcissism or something? Oh boy, I haven't heard that one. We'll have to tackle that.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of selfies, you love to travel, and I love to travel. I've traveled all over doing the Choose Love thing. I'm just wondering, where are your favorite places to go?
I love Croatia. I have like a total love affair with Croatia, and I never get sick of going because there's 1,600 islands, and
Wow.
the north is very different than the south. The north is very woodsy, and there's truffle hunting, and there's these beautiful underground stalagmite, stalactite caves, and dinosaur bones, and all this interesting, and then in the south is more like being in Greece. And the water from the north and the south is crystal clear. It's
Oh,
crystal clear and gorgeous, and the food is amazing, and the people are kind and great hosts, and they're very country proud. So everything is clean. Every tiny city is pristine. Like the oldest grandma is out there like sweeping and gardening, and it's just beautiful. It's beautiful, beautiful. And so that's my favorite. Although I think this summer we're gonna try, if all is well and everybody's traveling. My niece is graduating from high school, so her mom, they want to go to Paris. So I think we're gonna go meet them in Paris. And I never get sick of Paris because it's I do
nice.
love, any place in Europe. So
That's
and
really nice.
anything that has to do with horseback riding. So I think we're gonna go to London for a little bit first and ride in the countryside, because our other favorite spot is going to Montana and going to like a dude ranch or something. We really love that.
That's really fun. If you're in the UK, you can go to Wales, which is where my family's from. And I went
Really?
horseback riding there, and it is gorgeous. Yes.
Oh, okay. I might have to pick your brain about that.
Yeah, really, really nice. Well, I love horses. So in fact, I've got a horse I'm looking at right now, right out my window, which is just a blessing. And it's a dream come true
Oh,
for me. So
yeah, I love it. We love it too.
yeah, horses are so healing, and they're just such spiritual creatures. I just love them. I wanted
Where
my
are you
boys
thinking of going? What's your favorite?
Oh, I have to say, I think that my favorite is Hawaii.
Oh,
And I
yep.
know that that's a lot of people's favorite, but I had never been. And I actually, this is crazy. I had a session with John Edward. Do you know
Oh, yeah.
yeah. So I just felt like,
Were you able to talk to Jesse?
yeah, I just felt like a couple months
Oh,
later,
God,
I'm
how
like, you know
cool.
what? I'm going to do this. And so he agreed to see me. And during my session, he was like,
What a
what is this?
gift.
It was such a gift. And he said, what is this whole thing about Hawaii? And I said, what are you talking about? And he goes, well, whatever's going to happen, which is going to be huge, whatever project you're working on or whatever, Hawaii's going to weigh big in on it. And I was like, really? Okay. And he's like, well, have you ever been? And I said, no. And he's like, do you want to go? And I said, well, I mean, doesn't everybody want to go to Hawaii? But, there are other things on my mind right now. Well, interestingly enough, President Obama's sister, lives in Hawaii, and she works with the University of Hawaii in this space that I was starting to come into, which is social and emotional learning. So she asked me to come down and speak to her group at the university, and I met beautiful people there that became my ohana, which is family in Hawaii.
Wow.
And now, in Hawaii, almost every school is choosing love, which they call choosing aloha there, because aloha means love. And it's just so amazing. And exactly what he was saying. Wow, Hawaii's going to weigh in big on this. I hadn't planned a trip. I'd never even thought about going. And all of a sudden, I feel like Hawaii is my home. And I've spent so much time there. I love it.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And he knew.
Jesse
already knew.
He already knew, which was incredible. I think he knew when he wrote that message, nurturing healing love, on my kitchen chalkboard, actually, which is pretty amazing. So I wanted to ask you one last question, and it's about your faith. And you write this on your Instagram account, but it's the Baha'i faith, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And I was just thinking, maybe some people haven't heard of that, and I was wondering what is that? I mean, I did a little bit of research, but what that means for you and how that works in your life.
I've been a Baha'i since I was a teenager.
Okay.
One of the interesting things about the Baha'i faith is even if you're born into a Baha'i family, which my mom was a Baha'i, but you're really meant to go and research all religions on your own, kind of your independent investigation. And then you can't become a Baha'i till you're 15, because they want you to choose it of your own volition. And so I became a Baha'i when I was 15. And right now, actually, we are in our fasting period. It just started yesterday and it lasts for 19 days and it's the same time every year. And it's a little bit like Ramadan. I mean, that would be the only thing I could compare it to, because
And maybe Lent, because Christians just started Lent.
Yeah, it's kind of, yeah, I think Lent starts at different times every year though, right? Depending on
Oh, it starts 40 days before Easter.
Yeah, so it moves around a little bit. Ours is a hard 19 days starting on the 1st of March 1st. But we do go, it is right around Lent every year. And it's interesting because the Baha'i faith, we believe in all prophets being equal. So there's one God, that Jesus, Buddha, Moses, Muhammad, they all came to teach the same spiritual laws. Unfortunately, we don't believe in what the segregation, the people have taken it and turned it into, dissent and hatred. Unfortunately, it's like exactly the opposite of what we believe all of the prophets came to teach about the same God, and that they're all equal. So this time of year is our fasting time, and Lent was initially the same as Ramadan or any of the fasting. You fasted from sun up to sundown, no food, no water, for 40 days. Ours is 19 days. But now Lent has turned into, okay, what one thing do you want to give up for 40 days?
Right.
But that's not what it used to be. It was a hard fast. It was no food, no water from sun up to sundown. Of course, you can eat after sundown all night if you want to, and before the sun comes up. But it's meant to be a spiritual fast, because with the material food being, with the food being gone during the day, we're supposed to pray more, meditate more. And it's kind of like when there's like a little external toil that causes a spiritual growth. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So when you are without, you are far more aware of your within, and just connecting to God more during that 19 days. So it's a spiritual fast. It's not meant to be a diet or anything like that. It's a spiritual fast. So that's what we're doing right now.
I love the message of unity, that everyone's equal, and that we're all in this together, because
we're all in this together.
We started out this podcast saying that our hope was during COVID that we would realize that we're all in this together. And because bottom line, that's the truth. And I think the war in the Ukraine also reminds us of that once again, that, there are human beings there that are just like you and I, that did not want war. And I especially think about our most vulnerable, which is our kids. Can you imagine, like in this day and age, I'm having a hard time thinking about what's going on over there, and how
the trauma and the fear that they're not going to,
it's
being imprinted on them right now, that they're not going to, and how hard everybody else is trying to stay out of it while, imposing sanctions, but really trying to not engage, because nobody wants a world war. We know it would be, I mean, holy cow, I feel like everybody is just, on pins and needles right now with every single move that happens. It's really scary. And I really did hope, I think maybe it was because the Baha'i faith, our prophet founder was Baha'u'llah, and he taught only unity, only love, no war. Baha'is can't, we're conscientious objectors, so we cannot be in armed forces. We don't kill. We don't join political parties publicly. Of course, you can align whatever way you want and vote however you want, but we're not really encouraged to be in politics because it's just too dirty. It's just, and we're not aligned politically with any, and the sad thing too is in Iran, they are just slaughtering Baha'is all up one side and down the other, and they're taking their property and they're throwing them in jail because they think they're, because they're not Muslim. And the sad thing is, as Baha'is, we believe that Muhammad was a true prophet and equal with all the other prophets, and what he taught spiritually was the same, and what the people have taken and twisted to fit, war and murder and mayhem and all the things is not at all what the prophets were teaching or aligning with. Same with with Christ. He didn't say go out and crusade and kill people who are not that wasn't his message, but it's what they took from the message and twisted. And that's not what we believe, that all the spirituality and God is one and we are one and we are equal. And I was really hoping that at the end of all of the COVID, that would be the takeaway, but I think maybe we touched more on what actually happened, which was there was a lot of fear, which generated a lot of rage because there was no way to identify what everybody was actually feeling.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And all of those prophets that you mentioned, I mean, their message on earth was love. And love and
connection and compassion.
And compassion. Mm-hmm. Right.
And compassion.
Right.
And forgiveness.
Yes.
It's all the things on your board. Every prophet, Zoroaster, Moses, Buddha, Christ, Muhammad, everybody, Baha'u'llah, everybody taught like all the same, Krishna, like and how do we get so far from those things?
And here's the reminder that it's a choice. That it is a choice in every interaction that we have, that we wake up in the morning and it's a new day to make a new choice. And we have these opportunities all day long in what we think and how we feel and how we behave and how we treat one another to choose love. And that's the whole point of Jesse's movement, the Choose Love movement, is just a reminder that we can choose. That is where our personal power is as human beings, and that love can be that focus. That is a positive focus, and where we focus, we will go. And if our thoughts are on anxiety and fear and resentment and hatred, that is where we're going to go. And if they are on love, and it is as easy as
choosing a loving thought over a hateful thought.
Right.
Choosing a loving thought over a hateful thought.
Yes. Shifting the focus of your lens to love. And you have definitely helped us do that today, Eva, by just being so open and vulnerable and honest about your own experience. I know a lot of people, including myself, listened and learned from you. You are a beautiful person inside and out. And I'm just so grateful for you. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you. Thank you for having, this has just been such an uplifting conversation. I really appreciate you inviting me here to have such a beautiful talk and also remind you, I think it's the most fantastic reminder that it really is up to you. The only person that you're in control of and the only thoughts that you can really sway are your own, and choosing a loving thought over an angry thought or a hateful thought, or at least identifying why you're feeling that angry, fearful thought, and then choosing a loving thought. I think when we try to jump and smash an angry thought, it doesn't always work. But if you identify the thought, you stop and you're like, why am I actually super pissed off right now? Then at least you've allowed yourself, if nobody else heard it, at least you heard it. You said, you know what? I care how I feel right now. And even if no one else is listening, I give myself the time to understand why I'm feeling this angry thought. And now I can move on to choosing a loving thought. Because now I get why I'm feeling this. I think when you don't even understand why you're feeling it, it's kind of hard to jump an angry thought with a loving thought. But But once you give yourself the loving kindness and forgiveness and understanding, then you can jump it with a loving thought.
Yeah. And that's the formula. That formula is the courage to take a breath, even in conflict, to face what's going on, to be able to thoughtfully respond. You can't always choose what happens to you, but you can choose how you thoughtfully respond. But you have to get into that present space, like you were talking about, to think of something that you're grateful for, because that kind of raises your energy level and helps strengthen you. It strengthens your brain to consider forgiveness for yourself or others. And then the courage to step outside of your busyness and distraction, or even the anger and fear that you're feeling, to help somebody else. We, I think, don't realize yet how powerful doing for others is for ourselves. I mean, both my son JT and I have learned through now living our lives in service. We didn't do it before, but of course, as a mom with a murdered son, I mean, our kids can't be facing crazy shooters that are coming into their schools. They have to be safe, and they should be, and they can be. So dedicating my life and living it in service, I've realized, wow, this is healing for me. Everything that I do for someone else comes back and gives me hope and healing myself. JT's realized that too through his philanthropy work. And I'm just so, that's like the greatest gift that I've been given. And I'm so thankful for it.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing, for inviting me, because this is a beautiful way to start my day.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much, Eva. And I'd love to have you on again.
Oh, I'd love to be back. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much. Thanks, Eva. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh my
All
gosh.
right.
Have a great day. I really thank you so much.
You too. And we'll be in touch.
Okay. Take care, Annie.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey, hey, oh. It's all part of us. We can all choose love. It'll lift you up if you